Hello, I'm Todd Phillips, the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. I'm here today on behalf of the Canadian Dealer Academy through the Automotive Business School of Canada. In this special video series, we'll be interviewing faculty members to help gather their insights to help dealers in the midst of this pandemic. Today, we're joined by Chuck Seguin, who's a faculty member who teaches the Capstone program in the Canadian Dealer Academy. He's one of Canada's most well-regarded industry experts. So, Chuck, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Todd. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
So, Chuck, you spent a lot of time talking with dealer principals and advising them. What advice would you give them today in terms of how to operate in the midst of this pandemic?
Todd, the important thing is that each dealer principal across the country, regardless of whether they're running a small store, rather a big store, medium store, small town, big town, it's all about, number one, making sure that you manage your cash flows in an environment where health and safety has become the critical factor, employee safety, customer safety, and to take a look at the processes that you need to now do in your store to comply with the government regulations and to help your customers feel comfortable and safe so that they want to return to do business.
So in the midst of that, there's protocols. It's sort of an uneven picture across the country. Different dealerships are adapting. Is there some standard they should really be trying to find in the midst of this?
Not really a standard, because everybody is different. Some provinces, they're allowed to have service. Others have been closed completely. Others, sales are online only. There is no one particular method across the country, but the important thing is that you know your business, you know your customers. You know what it's going to take. You clearly have the government guidance that's coming out each and every day, the industry guidance that's coming out each and every day, these types of videos. There's a number of places for information on what's going to work in your store. What might be required in a downtown Toronto or downtown Montreal facility might not have to take place in a smaller area. Depends on what your local situation is, how your dealership is laid out, all that sort of stuff. And then the comfort of your employees in wanting to come to work, that they feel safe. And if they're feeling safe, then they'll make their customers feel safe. To the extent that you can stay open, try to. If you're running into cash flow difficulties, then obviously it may make more sense not to operate for a period of time. That's a decision that you have to make.
I've talked to a lot of dealers across the country who have had to lay off their teams, and for many of them, you can see it's not an easy decision for them. Some have never laid off anyone in the history of their dealerships. It's kind of a mixed picture. Some have laid off a lot, some only a few. Very tough decision, but labor obviously costs are such a huge factor in operating expense. So what would you recommend in terms of getting that number right in the midst of a pandemic?
What I've been telling dealers that I've been speaking to is go right down to a bare nuts cash flow. So if my doors were not open, what would I still be spending? What's going to have to take place? So hydro, property taxes, rents, those sorts of things. And then what am I going to need to keep two service bays open, for instance, if I'm going to be in the service business? So how many techs am I going to need? What am I going to need in parts? Am I going to have to bring in a service advisor? And just add incrementally what you would need for the business that you're likely going to get. Then as you open, you're going to have a pretty good feel for how many calls you're getting, what's the activity in on your internet account, people wanting to switch over their tires, do all sorts of things. And you'll get an idea whether 2 bays is going to be fine, whether you need 4, whether you need 6. And you begin to add incrementally as the business is there and begin to rebuild that way. I would not recommend that you come back with your full complement of staff that you had a month before the pandemic, because you're going to have a lot of people sitting around doing nothing. And you're going to have to train your employees to behave in a certain way. There may be flows that have to change in your dealership. How are parts going to be delivered to the service stalls? And how's all that going to happen? Because we still have to maintain very, very strict health and safety guidelines, which are going to be with us for an awfully long period of time.
One thing, obviously, you spend a lot of time talking to dealer principals that are the senior most management personnel, leading their dealership, and it's important that they show the leadership and they show calm in the midst of this. What advice would you give them in terms of communicating with their OEM, with their staff, with their customers to be there? Some of them have done video, some have done a fair bit of public outreach to just be that sort of steadying force. What would you recommend to them in terms of?
Yeah, it's interesting because as you look at websites, as you talk to dealers, they've all got a slightly different approach. The ones that have impressed me the most are the video ones. I find some of the written statements and whatever just begin to gloss over because you see too many of them. But the video allows you to be an individual, allows you to customize your message. It doesn't have to be professional quality, but in all of them that I have viewed, the emotion comes in, the sincerity comes in, and I think that's as much as you possibly can what you would try to do. It doesn't have to be professional photography. It can just be on your iPhone or something like that. But it's delivering that one-to-one connection because we're all missing that as humans. We're all missing that connection, the physical connection. And somehow, if you can bridge that gap, I think video is the answer for that.
It's interesting because these tools, these video tools like the ones we're using now, are starting to be implemented in dealerships in terms of sales, in terms of service appointments. And I think this is something that is going to stick because I've talked to a general manager who's used to greeting everyone at the door who said, you know what, this may be the new way that I interact with people. And I think consumers are going to warm up to the idea that this is pretty cool. Maybe I don't have to visit to have, to get some detail answered. I can actually do it this way. So how do you feel about some of these tools that we've invented or adopted in the midst of this sticking?
Well, I think the tools, I think we're all learning a different way of doing things. And the one thing that I keep coming back to is it takes 30 days to build a new habit. Well, a lot of people have been social distancing, have been staying at home for 60 days, 65 days. Mm-hmm. So there's we got to assume that there's some new things that they're doing or old things that they're not doing that are going to stick with them. And it's going to be that comfort level that comes out. But I think it's important for everybody to understand that the consumer is going to drive this. So we may have a whole bunch of things that governments are telling us what to do, but at the end of the day, we're still there to sell consumers vehicles, to provide them servicing. And it's going to be important that we have that connection with the consumer beyond some of the government stuff. We're going to have more government interference than we've ever had before. But if we can somehow build those one-on-one, and these new tools that we have are really good stuff. So the online sales process, being able to sign your finance documents and your car deals and whatever online in some provinces, that's going to stick with us forever. Online vehicle licensing is going to stick with us forever. A lot of the conversations that we have, routine conversations around the store, will become video. So the part of the test drive will be a video. Part of the delivery could be video. So we're going to reshape a number of different things. And internally, I think the industry is going to change tremendously. So you think of all the time that dealers and managers are out of the store attending OEM meetings. Well, that likely is all going to be video conferenced from now on. There may be the one or two big meetings for new product introductions and whatever, but a lot of the dealer council meetings, those things are all going to happen, I think, virtually. And I think what people are realizing is you can have better, richer, more focused communications through a whole bunch of smaller video chats than by flying people across the country to sit in a hotel room for 3 or 4 hours, then have them fly home. I think a lot of those things are going to change and going to stick for the good for the long term.
Well, Chuck, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on behalf of the Canadian Dealer Academy, and thanks for sharing your insights with dealers across the country today.